Today I'm going to be talking about finger exercises, and I'm going to show you one of my favourites. Now, I've called this the ultimate finger exercise in a possibly vain effort to make a video about finger exercises seem exciting, but ultimate finger exercise or not, I promise you that working on this a little bit will do some good things for your playing. So firstly, let's hear what this sounds like. I know that some players really love working on exercises of this kind and they like the whole gymnastic side of learning to play guitar, but then for others this is probably going to be the opposite of all they believe in musically. Now, personally, I think I'm somewhere in between those two extremes. I wouldn't spend ages working on this kind of exercise. I think the priority should always be working on actual music, but I think a little bit of time spent on this kind of thing can be really helpful. By working on this particular exercise, you're going to be improving your fretting hand technique, your picking technique, you're going to be working on your synchronization, and also, because unlike many technique exercises, I think this one is actually quite musical, you're going to be opening up your ears to some new and interesting sounds that you might actually be able to use playing some real music. Now, the basic idea with this exercise is we're going to be playing up and down an A major scale using various different interval skip patterns. So first thing you're going to need to know is this fingering of the A major scale. Now, some of you I'm sure will already know this, but let me just take you through it briefly. We've got the A root note here, 5th fret on the low E string, and then we've got a B onto the A string, C sharp, D, E, F sharp on the D string, G sharp, A, then we're going over into the second octave, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. I'm also going to include this high B at the 7th fret on the top string, and then we can come down the same way, and I'm going to include this G sharp here as the lowest note in this scale pattern, and then I'm going to come back to the root. Next, you need to know about intervals and what intervals are, and I think the simplest way to think about an interval is it's just the distance between any two musical notes, and you could think of this in terms of your musical alphabet. So from any starting note, a second is always going up to the next letter in the musical alphabet, a third is going up 3 letters in the alphabet, a fourth up 4 letters, and so on. So lots of intervals contained within this scale, but if we just go from the root note, this A here, the distance from A to B is a second, distance from A to C sharp is a third, A to D fourth, A to E is a fifth, etc. up the scale. I think that's all you need to know about intervals for the purposes of this exercise. There's a little bit more to it than that, but this isn't going to be a theory lesson. Okay, for the first part of this exercise, we're going to be going up and down our A major scale in thirds. And the best way to think about this part of the exercise, and for all of the other parts of the exercise for that matter, is in terms of pairs of notes. The first note of each pair is simply going to be going up or down the scale in order. And the second note of each pair is going to be the interval skip. So you're going to be skipping up a third, a fourth, then a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and finally an octave. So for the third exercise, we're going to be starting on A, which is our root note, and And then the next note is going to be our interval skip up a third. So you could think about this in terms of your musical alphabet. So A, B, C is going to be going up a third. And in the case of this A major scale, we need to make sure that the C is a C sharp, because we're keeping diatonic to the key of A major, and built into that key we've got three different sharps. We've got F, C and G sharp. So our first pair of notes is A, followed by C sharp. Another way of thinking about that is just your starting note and then just counting the scale degrees. So 1, 2, 3 is a third from A. So we've got A to C sharp. Then we're just doing that from all of the other degrees of the scale. So the second degree of the scale is a B, and then we're going to be skipping up a third from B. So we're now thinking B, C sharp, D. So B to D is our next pair of notes. Then our third note in the scale is C sharp, and we're going to be going up a third from C sharp. So C sharp, we're skipping D, we're going to be playing this E. So C sharp to E, and then so on through the scale really. We've got D to F sharp, E to G sharp, F sharp to A, and then we're up into the second octave of the scale, just exactly the same thing. Until we get to this high B note. This is the highest note in this exercise, and as soon as we hit that high B, we're going to reverse everything and come back the other way. So we're going to start on this high A, and now we're skipping down a third to F sharp, then it's G sharp down to E, and so on backwards through the scale. Until we hit this low G sharp here, and then the next part of the exercise begins. So the first thing I want you to do is just to get that pattern together, and it might take a little bit of time just getting used to those interval skips and where to put your fingers. So take your time with that, and then when you're ready you can start playing through the whole thing in time. And it's then that I want you to focus on good technical habits. So pay attention to your fretting hand, pay attention to your picking hand, make sure your fingers aren't flying too far away from the fretboard, make sure your picking technique is nice and accurate and efficient. I think generally with these exercises I'm doing alternate picking throughout, but there are a few options there. I mean, if you wanted to be really thorough, you could start with a downstroke and alternate pick the whole exercise. Then you could do the same thing but starting with an upstroke. Then you're just making sure that you're really versatile with your picking technique. So why don't I just play through the whole of this part of the exercise in time for you quite slowly. So we've got 2, 3, 4. Notice that fingering wise everything just stays in position. My second finger is at the 5th fret and the other fingers are just in this 4th fret position. One more thing to pay attention to in this exercise is keeping it nice and smooth, keeping all of the notes smoothly connected together, and the musical term for that is legato. So you want one note to be linked to the next one smoothly. You don't want any gaps between the notes, nor do you want any smudging or over ringing between the notes. So you don't want this kind of thing. So what you're going to need to do is play one note and then immediately and smoothly press down the next note whilst releasing pressure with the finger that was fretting the previous note, and that way you get a nice smooth legato sound. And there's just one spot in this third exercise where that might be a little bit problematic, where you've got this D to F sharp interval skip, and that's at the 7th fret going from the G to the B, and the only way to really do that is to fret both notes with your little finger. And to get that smooth you might need to use that rolling technique where you're fretting the D with the tip of your little finger, then you're just flattening that first joint of the finger down and rolling over onto the F sharp, so that as the pressure releases from the D, you're pressing down onto the F sharp and you can get the notes linked together smoothly. And it's the same thing coming back the other way. That rolling technique, except your finger is flattened down and then it's standing up onto the tip. So you have the basic idea. Now we're really just going to be doing the same thing, except the interval skip has changed. Now we're going to be going up and down our A major scale in fourths. So here we just need to think about, from any starting note, going up 4 scale degrees or 4 letters of the musical alphabet. So you can either think, here's our first note, 1, 2, 3, 4 is a fourth, or you can think A, B, C sharp, D is a fourth. So starting on the root, A to D is our fourth. Then we go to the next degree of the scale, which is a B, up 4 from that, gives you an E. And just take that through the scale. So then we will have C sharp, F sharp, D to G sharp, E to A, F sharp to B, G sharp to C sharp, and so on up the scale. And then we hit that high B, that's the limit of this exercise, and then we're going to reverse everything. So we're coming down from A to E, G sharp to D, and on down the scale. And I think this exercise is considerably harder than the thirds, because we've got even more of that rolling kind of thing going on. So lots of these fourths are on the same fret on different strings. So it's really good exercise with each of your fingers, just getting used to that rolling motion, which will enable you to keep this whole exercise sounding smooth. So I'm just going to play through the entire thing slowly for you. 2, 3, 4. So you've probably guessed what's going to happen next. We're going to be doing the same thing, except we're going to be using fifths. So from our starting note of A, we're going to be going up a fifth. So you can think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you could think A, B, C sharp, D, E. A to E is our first pair of notes. And then we're simply going to do that from each of the other degrees of the scale. So from B, up a fifth, to F sharp, and then continue on up the scale. Until we hit our high B, and then we're going to be coming down again from A, going down in fifths. So as the intervals increase, I think so does the difficulty of the exercise. I think this is technically more difficult because you've got wider intervals, you've got string skips and various different stretches going on in this hand. That's more challenging in the picking hand as well. And also I think just for your ear, these intervals are a little bit trickier to get a handle on because our ears are used to seconds, thirds and fourths in melodies, but less used to the sound of fifths, sixths, sevenths and octaves, melodically speaking, I think. So I'm just going to play all the way through that slowly for you. again, I think you'll find it quite challenging to keep that smooth and to keep that legato sound. So just do your best with that. Sometimes it's near impossible to get the notes completely smoothly connected, but that's what you're striving for with this exercise. Moving on to 6 then, and you know the drill by now, so I'm not going to take you through all of the individual notes here. If you can count and if you know your alphabet, you can figure this stuff out. It might take a little bit of time to actually get it under your fingers so you can play it smoothly, but you should at least be able to figure out the notes. So here we go. A major scale in 6. Picking wise with this one, and when the intervals get a bit wider and we've got string skips involved, I personally find it easier to do down up when you're ascending and then up down when you're descending. So going up through this exercise, I'm picking down, up, and then when coming down it will be something like this: up, down, up, down. That seems to work best for me, but as I say, for extra difficulty and for extra picking versatility, then you could try doing the opposite of that just to challenge yourself. Let's try 7ths then, and these are probably the weirdest sounding interval of the bunch, but if you want to inject a little bit of weirdness into your soloing, then maybe 7ths will be worth a try. Just slowly, they're going to sound like this. Once again, that's pretty hard to connect those notes together smoothly and in a legato fashion, so just do your best with that. There are a few different fingering options you can try, so just have a play around and see what works best for you. And finally, let's try some octaves, and this is a really challenging and finger mangling exercise because since we're dealing with octaves, you're going to have to skip at least one string and in some cases 2 strings if we're keeping all of this in position. So that will sound like this. And that's the final exercise, or the final element of this bigger exercise. So what I would urge you to do is to work on each of those interval exercises separately, and then for the final challenge, when you're ready, you could try stringing them all together and playing them one after the other in time like I did at the start of this video. So there we have it. I hope you find this exercise useful. Remember that you don't necessarily have to attempt the whole thing. It's quite a challenging exercise taken as a whole, but if you're a beginner, for instance, you might just want to focus on the basic scale going up and down and the thirds pattern, and then as your technique improves you can gradually phase in some of those other intervals. But have fun, thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye bye.